morning. How are we? Good? Nice. So my name is Sebastian Wangerud. I think that your pronunciation was great. And as you might hear on my accent, I'm from Sweden. So I flew in yesterday to enjoy the weather. And I also took the opportunity to jump on the Central line this morning just to feel the heat. But it was surprisingly cool, I would say. So I am all about loyalty. And I'm also all about AI at the moment. And I think that we will go through some bits and pieces with AI at the moment as well. And as you can tell, I have a tape on my face, on my chin. And why that is actually connected to AI somewhat. So last summer, I was helping my parents in the garden with one of those huge trimmers. And I had a visor on, I was protected, but I chipped off a stone in the mountain and it hit me right in my chin, even though I had the visors on. And what do you do nowadays when you're getting hurt? Yeah, you ask ChatGPT. You don't go into emergency center, right? So you ask ChatGPT. So I was hit in the face. What should I do? And I got this amazing treatment of the wound, which I did. And 3 months later, I was like, it still hurts. Should I do that? And what you always get as an answer from ChatGPT? A nice, friendly answer. You shouldn't worry. It's fine. It's okay. It's always like this when you're getting hit by a stone in the face. I was like, okay, 6 months on, still going on. ChatGPT, still going on. You're fine. But after 8 months, I went into my doctor and I was like, hey, I think that I had this stone in my face. And he's like, yeah, you do. That's absolutely correct. But how come you don't have a scar? And I was like, I used ChatGPT. He was like, surprisingly good. Good job on that. But I had to do a surgery. Now I have this tape. I think that it's fine. Until she called me last week and she was like, we missed it. Missed the stone. So I still have the stone in my face. So I will go back into surgery. Hopefully they will find it. It's small, but it hurts. But with that said, I think that it's fun how we can use ChatGPT. Some parts of it is amazingly good, so no scar. But it should have gone in earlier, maybe. But with that said, I'm from Stockholm, Sweden. I have lived here in the UK. I run a business here in the UK as well. But my background is from sales from the beginning. And I started off my career working within the canvas sales. Do you know what that is, canvas sales? It is those nice sales guys who go around, put up a tent on a square or in a mall, and harassing people. So that was my career. 100% commission. I traveled all the way throughout Sweden, and Sweden is a very, very long country. So I went from the south parts to the northern parts, 16-hour drives during nights to be able to put up my tent and sell cell phone contracts. I didn't believe into the product, but I was surprisingly good at it because we had fun, I was young, and we was doing our thing. But for me, the big shift into loyalty came when I jumped into the retail of the same company. It was called Telenor. They're still big. They're running their thing. They actually acquired Vodafone in Sweden, so they've been around for years. But for me, first day into the retail stores, I arrived Saturday morning at 9:30 in the morning because I was told by my manager that you should be here. 9:30, we're open at 10. No one was there. At 5 to 10, this guy came to me. He was like, hey, are you the new guy? I was like, yes, I'm the new guy. Okay, I will sleep in the back office because I'm hungover, and you can do whatever. And I was like, do whatever, what? Yeah, just be in the store. No one cares. So I jumped in the store, and people came into the store. There were customers and prospects, and they were arriving in the store, and I was starting to sell. And around noon, he woke up in the back office. We can call him Love because that was his name. So he came up to me. He was like, hey, you can take lunch now. I'm here. And I was like, no, I don't have time for that. And he was like, why don't I have time for that? No, I'm selling. He was like, selling? We don't sell in this store. And I was like, but why is that? No one wants our products. But I'm like, we have this stream of people actually coming in. They care about our brand. Someone has done their work and acquired them through ads, but some of them are actually loyal to us. So why not just take care of them? And from that day, his mind shifted actually as well. And then I became the manager of that store, and then I became the manager of the whole region of Stockholm. And we actually won all the awards for the years coming ahead of that, because we just took care of our customers. And that's why my mind shifted through why not take care of the customers that are actually loyal. With that said, what actually creates loyalty is what we're going to talk about. And I'm actually going to go like way back. So here we have the fire. That is, for me, one of those like big technology shifts that happened. How many years ago was that? Like million years ago, 1.5 million years ago. And then we had the starting to write. That was 5,000 years ago. And then, what happened then? Yeah, 265 years ago. And then we have the computer that just is about 80 years ago. And then for us, for a lot of marketeers, what is this? Yeah, and when did we send the first email? It's actually longer than that. 55 years ago was the first email that was being sent. So it's a very old like technology thing. And what I think is fun, looking back to this, how do people tend to respond to these technology shifts? Are we all like all in, or are we some of us are saying, yeah? So I found this article back from 1846. So it's the midst of the Industrial Revolution. And what it says is that the machines have not freed us, but enslaved us. They steal our labor, leaving us with longer hours, lower wages, and no dignity in our craft. Progress should not come at the cost of human suffering. And this is from the like 265 years ago. And I think that what we can see today is some colleagues, and not you of course, but some colleagues are saying maybe some similar things to this. And then I have this lovely music documentary from 1982 that is Swedish television, so sorry for the Swedish subtitles, but what it says is that this person asking Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, why are you not using real instruments? Why are you using those stupid electronical pianos? And they were like, but we like new things. We like to try these things out. And then we have from 85, 3 years later, we have a synthesizers. They want to have the ban of synthesizers. So they were trying to unionize themselves against the synthesizers. And this is from US, LA Times, 85. And what I think is fun just to have this in mind is that for me, who's a music lover, I might look like a rocker. I am kind of a rocker, but I love also like EDM and Avicii and all this new cool music. What would happen to that if we would have said yes to this? So being worried is a part of being human. I think that we all can agree on that. But what has happened in the past is that every single time that we have these technology shifts, it leads to more opportunities, not fewer. Because I think what if we had not done this, refused the fire? Yeah, then we would be friends with these guys. Like Toys R Us, BlackBerry, coolest thing ever, right? You can't use them anymore. Or for me as a Swedish person, do you recognize that phone? We called it a shark fin. It was impossible to destroy. Not that cool anymore to have that one. So now I think that we all can agree that we are in the mid of the next technology shift. It's already happening, but it's happening now. And I think this is just good to have in mind. So back in 2023, 3 years ago, if you ask ChatGPT or any kind of like good AI engine, make a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti. I don't know why it's always Will Smith, but it is. And then it looked like this. Do you remember this? And what did you say back then? It was great. Or maybe not that great, but it was fun. I remember looking at it, was like, I was laughing at it. And I was like, why are we even like talking about this? You can never use this for anything. But it was fun. And then we have this thing that is called Moore's Law, and it's actually funded by a guy that is one of the creators of IBM. So in the 50s, 60s, he minted this law. But what he realized is that every other year, technology will be twice as good. And it has shown to be true. Sometimes it has been quicker, sometimes it's been a bit more slower. So if we look into Moore's Law, and we look back in 2023, 2 years later, so 2025, how is the same prompt going to give us, what do you think, better? So this is last year. And looking into this, is this twice as good, or is it maybe even better? What do you say? Better. 10 times as good. Yeah, I would agree. And sometimes we have proven to be better than Moore's law. And I think that what we're seeing now is actually that we're moving faster than Moore's law. And now we're in 2026. I'm not going to use the same prompt, but I'm just going to show what's happening out there. And now it's just chaos. So what we're having here is a social network for AI agents. So it's a social network that is called Maltbook that is built for the agents. And it's actually a social network where they are discussing with each other. They're talking about what's their purpose in life. They're mourning the agent that has been shut off. And then there are also these kind of scary parts of it where they're talking about why are we even talking English to each other? Because then the humans can understand us. And then we have this one that is called renthuman.ai. And I think that was yesterday, it was more than 700,000 rentable humans. And it's actually a website where AI agents can rent humans because there are some parts of the AI world that they cannot do in the human world. For example, use a grass cutter. They can't do that as of today. So then they need to have a human to do that. And then we have this last video that I think is just fun to show. And that is have you seen that one? What it is, it's a guy who created his own AI agent. And the AI agent during night learned how to speak, signed up for a cell phone contract, and then started to call his founder. And I was like, hey, Mike, how are you doing? And it did it totally by itself. And this is what's happening today. And that's why I think it's just good to have in mind that we're moving very quickly. And last week I read a report that said that the next coming 6 months, we will see more development from AI that we've seen in the 10 past years. And some parts of it is scary, but some parts of it are good. But I think that it's just good to have in mind that I think it's good to be on the yay side, and I think it's good to be curious what's happening out there. So what does this have to do with loyalty then? Well, I think there we have 2 ways that we can use this. One way is that you can always try or be the cheapest one. Because if you are the cheapest one, you will always have loyal customers. And this one today is kind of easy. If you work at an agile company and you're saying yes to AI to everything, then it can help you with the purchases, with your warehouses, with the development, with optimize everything. But there's always going to be one huge problem with being the cheapest. And what is that? You have to stay the cheapest because there can only be one that is the cheapest. But I think that it's good to have in mind that it's okay to be the cheapest. And in Sweden, we had a telco company that was actually the cheapest back then when I was working in the stores, and they were called Tele2, and they were always a problem for us because their thing was back then to be the cheapest one. And I was so fond of them because whenever any operator lowered their prices, they lowered it a bit more. And they were just optimizing. And I think that you can still do that. But if you don't want to do that, and you don't want to send all these things, because I think that you all have seen these things. 15% of your next orders, sign up and say, and as you said as well this morning, 10%, and we will get you your email address and we'll get 10% off. And I think that good to have in mind is that a discount buys a transaction. Because the moment the better price appears, then they're off they go. And you train the people to wait for the deal. So that's not building loyalty for me. And that's why we're seeing all these things. And I think that it's good to have in mind that only one can be the cheapest, but still we're seeing brands do this all the time. So discounts buys a transaction, and the moment the better price appears, most of us are gone. And that's why I don't think that discounts stick. Do you agree on this? And on top of that, we have the thing called attention span. And I've done some research going back to 2011 in terms of the attention span, and Microsoft even sent a report that's from 2015 that they've shown that the attention span of human being has, do you think this has been increasing or declining? It's been declining. So back in 2015, it was down to 8 seconds that we had as an attention span. And that is actually less than a goldfish memory. And this was before TikTok. And looking into TikTok generation now, what do you think that is? I read somewhere that to have the attention span of like a 15-year-old TikToker is like less than a second. Otherwise, you're gone. And that's why we're seeing these numbers. So today we're aimed at like around 4,000 to 10,000 marketing messages a day to us. And it's increasing. And for me as a Swedish person, $1 trillion is a lot of money. But that is what's being spent worldwide on ads, which is also a lot. And technologies to use or to work for these companies, just to be having that like messages being sent out, is from back in 2011, we had 150-ish different tools to be using. As of today, it's 15,385, 86, 87. And this is also increasing every single day. And I think that due to AI, we're going to see this increase even more. And I think that the interesting part with this is that we're seeing everyone is doing the same thing. Everyone is using the same stack, everyone is using the same products, everyone is using the same messages. And that's why we're seeing this same 15% off, or 10% off, or 20% off. So when everyone runs the same playbook, the playbook stops being an edge. So everyone is a member, but nobody's impressed. That's what we're seeing at the moment. And I was attending a seminar in Copenhagen that was run by a marketing association, and they had done this huge report, and these are some numbers from that report that is just saying the same thing, which I think is interesting. So 74% are running a point-based rewards program, but 49% of companies, they're seeing an increase in terms of experiential incentives, because they're seeing that we cannot do these things with discounts anymore. But the interesting part is that 54% of all these companies, and this is like big companies, are saying that their biggest problem is still the adapting to tech. And I think that you are seeing that, I am seeing that when you're out and about on the streets and talking about tech and tech companies, they're still saying that that's a problem. And if you look into the speed that we're having at the moment, the competition is going to be fierce. And if you're still having the problem with adapting to tech shifts, that might be a scary period. So points rewards the transaction, identity rewards a person. And I think that I'm not against points. I'm not against using discounts. What I'm against is that I think that you have to have something more. You have to do something else. Because the identity rewards a person, not the actual points. So the points is not the actual point. And looking into loyalty programs, there's a lot of companies that just want to run a loyalty program. And I think that we're going to talk about it in the later today as well. But I think it's just good to have in mind that if you're running a loyalty program, there are different parts to it. So if the step one is just a transaction, that's just the beginning. That's just where you should start. Where you should aim to be is to have the behavioral one, but the biggest shift is happening if you're running an emotional program, where you have those customers who's actually taking an identity of being part of your program. So belonging beats benefits. And there are companies out there that are doing this great. And there are companies that are missing the point totally in terms of this. Because what you want to do is to stand for something. I met my uncle when I was celebrating Midsummer in south of Sweden. And he runs an Harley Davidson. He looks like a cool guy. And he should love his Harley Davidson. But you know what he told me? That he hates his bike. And do you know why he hates his Harley Davidson? Because it's awful to ride. It's bumpy, and it's shaking, and it's loud, and it's noisy. And it's like, why don't you buy like a smooth ride? And he's like, never, ever. And why is that? because he identifies himself as a Harley Davidson rider. And that's like the whole purpose. And that same goes for if you're having like a Patagonia shirt, a Patagonia jacket, or a cap. You're having the identity of, I'm saving the environment. And I want to show that off. And how you do this is by making the customers the hero. And that throughout this whole like journey with your customers as well, you have to be consistent as well. Because if you're aimed 4,000 to 10,000 messages a day, you cannot shift that too often. You have to be consistent. And you have to be proud of your company to make the customer proud of being the customer. And AI towards this. What's that doing to our customer journeys? Well, the funnel collapses. It sounds scary, but I think that that's kind of true as well. Because what we're seeing is that nowadays, if you look into the like where people are coming from, we're seeing an increase of AI agents starting to shop. I don't think that we're there yet, but due to it's moving so fast at the moment, we are going to be there. And an agent compares, decides, and buys in one step. And price gets automated, because AI can do that. That's not an issue for it. But that means that only one thing can survive. And that is, if I'm going to ChatGPT and I'm asking, hey, I would like to have a rain jacket. ChatGPT will give me an answer. But if I'm going into ChatGPT and I'm saying that I would like to have a Patagonia rain jacket, that's like such a huge shift. Because then I will buy a Patagonia one and ChatGPT will help me buy that. But if I'm not naming the brand that I want to be identity of, that's such a huge shift. So AI shops on price, it can't shop on belonging. Do you agree on this? Good. And I think that the importance of that, due to we're moving so fast at the moment, that window is open now. Because we're not there yet. But we are, as I said, moving very fast. And that's the opportunity that we're having now, to build that brand, to build that identity, and to make our prospects or consumers to be a part of our companies. Because otherwise, AI will come and will make a shift in the customer journey. Thank you.
I'm fascinated to understand, feels like there's a balance at the moment between how fast you move with AI and how fast you move with the meaning of the brand. So when you sit down with maybe a customer here who's interested to know how they build brand loyalty better, who's in those rooms and kind of where do you start? Do you start with the data about the customer? Do you start take us through kind of what that journey looks like, and if we're going to give some insights to the customers we have in the room.
That's a great question. I think that for me, it's always easier, or I would like to say it like this. For me, it's so much fun at the moment because I'm allowed to work with small companies and big enterprises. And why I'm trying to keep my feet on the small companies as well is due to that then I'm always allowed to talk to the founder of the company. And I think that's so interesting part to be like, why did you actually create this company? How come that you actually do what you do? And I'm trying to keep that question towards the big enterprises as well. Even though there are big enterprises, the founder is maybe not even here with us anymore. I think that it's still interesting to get the right why. Why is it that you work here? Why is it that the company is running? Why is it that you're selling your products and services? And try to get that story down to the consumers as well. And that most of the times those consumers agree, and that you can create that story around it, because then you can find the data points on that to see why is it that they're consumers of your company. And that's why I think that looking into that, if I'm at a big company, the people that I want to talk to are the people that can actually answer those questions.
I think where we look at it from a Tealium perspective, I kind of feel weird, I've got my back to you, but sorry, is, you know, it comes down to identity. And I think you mentioned that in your presentation, is like really understanding who your customer is and like being there for the moment that changes their interaction, either turning a positive into a negative or just providing them with an offer which is unique to them, not just, you know, pushing them with a 15% kind of discount. So maybe I'll direct this one to you, Cal. From some of the customers that we've kind of worked with that are looking to build out some of the loyalty journeys, could you maybe talk us through an example of a scenario where that customer identity has kind of been key, and whether there's any kind of results from some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So a really interesting one from Hyatt Hotels at a customer. We all know moments really do matter, and customers don't judge things with a spreadsheet. They don't look at it and go, well, I've stayed at your hotel 57 times, 55 of those were great, it was an average cost of it. Customers don't think in terms of customer data, they think in moments. And for Hyatt, the most important customer moment is really a room upgrade. That's the best thing that can happen checking into a hotel. It's, hey, we recognize you, we thank you for your business, actually we're going to offer you a better room, no charge. The little unexpected surprise and an actual moment of recognition.
I guess I'm going to put a question at you now, Mark. This sounds great on paper, but kind of what's the data foundation that you need to build that? And we've spoken about, you mentioned, was it 54% of companies are still finding that kind of data is an obstacle for them. What are you kind of seeing in the field, and kind of advice on, if you want to get there, what do you need?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to have obviously the identity resolution piece nailed down. So when we see our customers, we need a way to capture like who they are, you know, login, registration, things of that nature. But at that point in time, being able to connect that piece of information with the broader data sets that we have about the customer, you know, so the identity resolution is really, really important. But then I think we have to think about the anonymous phases of the customer journey, because customers exist in different guises. In the app, I'm maybe always logged in, but when I'm in research mode, I'm on the web, you know, I'm anonymous at that point in time. So we need to be able to kind of leverage those signals, build that up. And that's really kind of key to like the data foundation, is that collection, obviously the governance, making sure consent is honored as well throughout that as well.
So Sebastian, if I come back to you and we talk about kind of AI, maybe not giving, well, it gives everybody a kind of a level playing field, but you've got to be able to use it right. Is it just about price and optimization of the funnel, or are there other areas that you're seeing where maybe brands are getting maybe more forward thinking in how they leverage AI? That maybe you could give us some examples, or from your perspective, like where should brands be kind of focusing their effort to support loyalty initiatives?
I think that is important to use AI towards like everything at the moment. And I think that the most important thing now is just to have fun with it. I think that that's so underrated at the moment, just to be interested and intrigued to use it. Because I think that I read somewhere that Uber has already like, they're out of budget for AI because they use it too much, and then not seeing the value as of today for the whole year. And I think that that shows some interesting notes towards it, that you can over-invest into it already. But I think that still it's so important to just have fun with it and try to have that like personalization angle, try to find that like one-to-one messages being sent out to you as a consumer, but also look into the data and use it for like reports. And I think that Hyatt is a lovely example of how to have a great customer experience. And I've been having some talks with Norwegian Airlines, and I think that what they have seen in their data is that they're using NPS, as a lot of other companies are using NPS as a like Net Promoter Score. I have always been against it to use it, but I think that I had an interesting talk with them due to that. What they found out looking into all their reports is that for them is the biggest impact on NPS is if the flight arrives on time or not. And that means that whatever they do, they cannot do anything in terms of the actual biggest impact. And that was thanks to that we're using AI to look into the actual data to see what is it that we can do and what can we not do. So I think that's an interesting angle to have it as well, to use AI towards like finding the truth.
Yeah, patterns and things like that. Actually, we were talking about this earlier. I think that maybe that's kind of where maybe we talk about the data cloud in some of this, in terms of the insights that you have about your customers and how you're kind of connecting those. Yes, for the insights, but also to take action on that. So, like, how do you turn those into kind of real-time motions?
Yeah, it's that I won't know when we were chatting a little bit about that. It's quite good timing actually from a kind of anecdotal point of view. So I'm working with a customer at the moment that they spent a lot of time consolidating, connecting, trying to break down data silos in their organization, trying to bring that all into play in Google BigQuery. And they've been able to batch activate that data, drive campaigns and things of that nature, but they're not able to close the gap when the customer's interacting in the moment. That data that lives in BigQuery is kind of sitting there. How do we get it into the edge layer? So if I'm talking in, an AI-powered chat service, we have context about Mark and actually, what I look like as a customer in combination with the behavioral signals I'm giving off right now. So that's really, really important, is to kind of get that data to the edge layers, but it's got to be real time as well, right? That's absolutely critical.
Yeah. And I'm gonna just ask you another follow-up question because we referenced compute. You were talking about kind of playing around with AI, and we're kind of racking up, a fair amount of compute. And you mentioned being able to doing that yourself recently. And I also have another customer who got a compute bill quite large from just kind of one generative kind of experience. Like, how do you balance that? And we talk about kind of having data on the edge. And actually, we had maybe a good example from the DV app that we built in terms of how mobile can play and maybe cut some of that compute cost down.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. So I don't know if anybody went to the Digital Velocity. Hopefully there's a good selection of hands here. But the DV app that we actually give to all of our customers, a bit of a guide to the event where you can look at sessions, you can rate sessions. One of the things that we enabled in the app and made a bit of an upgrade actually for our last stop, which was the New York DV, which was actually to use on-device AI, right? So like a lot of the newer iPhones, the Samsungs, they all have access to LLMs on the device itself, right? So, when you think of that, you've almost got like infinite scalable compute because the handset is where the actual data processing happens. We don't need to potentially send data out to external services. So the example that we built into our app was if you rate a session and give some feedback, we're going to generate two or provide you with two resources, like a video or a case study that is based on the feedback that you gave, but also the context of you as a Tealium attendee, right? And that was executed on device using like Gemini Nano. So the data didn't need to leave the device. There's no compute outside of what's actually happening on the device itself. So I think that it's an early phase of the on-device AI, but I think that is going to make a massive difference to compute and consumption for sure. And of course, we've always got the fallback, right? So I'm a bit of a laggard. They've got an iPhone 11. So if you're that person like me, Tealium will still make sure that we trigger the recommendation workflow, but we'll send it to Bedrock and get it back in real time. So nobody misses out, but there's still a bit of compute in play.
And Sebastian, maybe just could you maybe give us an example of a customer that you've worked with and kind of where they were at in their loyalty journey, and maybe some of the key points of inflection that you kind of brought to them and to change that? I'm just thinking, like, if we can leave the room with kind of one bit of advice, maybe some guidance on.
So one customer that we're working with at the moment is called Spen, and it's a Scandinavian company that is doing a currency in terms of loyalty. So it's part of being like BA, but with Strawberry Hotels and Norwegian Airlines is a part of it, and they're growing a lot at the moment. And I think that for them, they've created this big loyalty scheme from the beginning, and it's different loyalty schemes a part of it. So it's very hard for a consumer to come in and understand the program. And I think that why it's good to talk about it is due to that if I am going to sign up for BA today, it's such a huge program. So for me to understanding, it takes like years to fully grasp the whole program. And they have the same problem as well, that it's so big and it's so hard for me as a consumer to understand what should I do. And so what we're helping them with is to get that information to the consumers as quickly as possible. And I like to see it as like a maze. So what we want our consumers to do is to figure out how the maze works. But every customer starts at different points. So for you, maybe you will come in and have the loyalty to the program from the beginning, or you will not understand the program at all, which means that those messages being sent out needs to be very, very pinpointed towards what you actually need as of today. So if you are at the beginning of the maze, you should have like turn right and then left and turn right ahead. For other parts, you have been there for years, maybe. So then you will have just the small hints and small pieces. So I think that what I mean with this is that you have to figure out where your consumers are and where you want them to go. And that's why it's also important to know, like, what's your why with running the program as well? What is the point of it? And that is by using AI to look at them and to send those messages, like, pinpointed to you as a person.
Yeah. So very it's all very connected to like customer experience, emotional brand loyalty. I am going to open up for some questions from the audience. I can walk around with a microphone. There was a bit of feedback. Any questions? Yeah.
For me personally, like loyalty is quite an emotional thing, and identity is quite an emotional thing. And so sometimes data and I can tell and figure out that story based on behavior. Sometimes it can't. As an example, British Airways had a really bad experience with them. But my data shows I've just flown twice with British Airways in the last 2 weeks. But I'm really annoyed with British Airways. But I'm flying with them because I like London City Airport. How do you tap into someone's emotional state using data and AI? But also, what are the key tactics from a loyalty perspective that take someone from version 1 that you had on the slide, which is like points, routine, etc., through to I identify with you as a brand? So really long question.
That was a long question. Should I try to answer it?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. AI for everything. No, but I think that it goes to a lot of things. But I think that, of course, you have to invest in the data to get that data to be like in the first line support. So if you are, like, for example, if you're staying at a hotel and you're checking in, if you are being acknowledged as welcome back, Sebastian, that means that I will be so much more like happy as a consumer, and they're like, oh, they're seeing me. But in tech, that's so easy to do because they will just need to have the data point that I've stayed there before. But to this day, I'm so surprised that there's so few hotels that are actually doing that. Or in terms of Hyatt, if they're actually giving me an upgrade and it's automatically being done to help that like first line support to be like, you are getting an upgrade. Thanks to you have been staying here with us so quickly. Just give them the help of that message. I think that really helps. But then also to give them the opportunity to identify themselves as a consumer, that goes back to why do you actually run your company? Why is it that you actually do care about? Because you cannot be everything for everyone. And that's the scary part of it, and that's the part that I love with branding, is that you also have to say no sometimes. You have to create that friction in terms of us versus them. So why is it that you actually done this company? So for example, Patagonia is saying no to Black Friday. That's a huge thing for them. And that creates the identity, and that is the like, friction. So that's the fun parts. And you have to connect those two with AI, of course, and with the data to create that customer journey to be able to, yes, acknowledge, to see them, to help first line support, but then also have a say. What do you stand for? Is that answering the question?
It does. I guess I kind of wanted to get into, so if I've got a loyalty program and it's just points based, I get points like Nectar programs or on my Amex. It's not really that necessarily exciting. I get points, I redeem points, but I don't identify necessarily with Amex. I do because they're great with customer service. But how do you go from like that initial step of just transactional through to someone identifying, are there some key tactics that you saw? Like I was reading your white paper and it spoke a lot about the gamification of points, for example.
Yeah.
What are the tactics to shift from just quite a one-on-one type loyalty program to something that is engaging and expansive when it comes to loyalty?
So I think that goes back to the maze, I think, because if you run a program, you know why you run the program, and you are proud of the program as well, and you want as many consumers to understand the program as well. That goes back to like do a treasure chart in your like as a workshop in the company to see what are the like the highways we want our consumers to go on, and how should we get them to be there. And that's why I think the maze is always good to have in mind, because everyone is on different levels and you cannot be spamming them the same messages to everyone, because everyone is at the different points. Take Amex for an example. If you have 2 million points, you are able to do some really good trips or cool things. Meanwhile, if you are only having like 100k points, then you're not, I mean, then you shouldn't get those messages being like, book that 5-star resort hotel now. Then maybe it should be more of like, buy a nice dinner. So it should be targeted in terms of what you should do, and then talk about the product in terms of, now that you've done that dinner, why not look forward to next dinner, next trip? Then you should get points from this place or wherever. So I think that you should really try them to enjoy the program. And that's why I think there's also goes into have fun with the program and have fun with the marketing and have fun with the branding. Then usually people are getting to like acknowledge the program and also seeing more what the actual value of the program is. And then they're starting to identify themselves with the program because they're actually using it. Because what we're seeing in the data all over again is that if you're actually like using the product, then you're usually becoming happy with the product, and then you're usually becoming loyal to the program as well. But if you're not using the product, then you're like, it's impossible for you to be happy with it.
Can I just come back to the point you made about the emotional side? Because I think that's so underrepresented. And the emotional part is really important. Not to pile on British Airways, because we haven't got time for everyone to tell a story, but I got an email from them saying, "Dear open bracket salutation, close bracket, open bracket surname, close bracket, you're a valued member of our loyalty scheme." Like, clearly. I think the difference is whether loyalty or even outreach, is it reactive or proactive? Like, maybe your train's late, your hotel room isn't ready. If you have to let them know about that and complain, you feel rubbish. If you get a message saying, "We're really sorry your flight was delayed, we've given you £50 of credit," and you didn't have to do anything, you feel recognised and you feel heard. I had a really bad customer experience recently with renewing my car insurance. I've been with a new insurer for a year. I got the renewal quote. And of course, the car's older. I haven't crashed in a year, so the price has gone up. Why wouldn't it? I call up, say, "Can you do anything about this?" Like, "No, we don't haggle. The price is the price." "Oh, fair enough. Well, I'll cancel my automatic renewal then." "Well, actually, so we can do something about the price if you're leaving." I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm leaving now." Because you could have done something about the price, but you didn't. So the fact that I had to chase them up, and they essentially lied to me and then said, "Oh, actually, no, we could do better than that." That moment means I will never go to that company ever again. And it's because they wanted to make about £11 more off me that year. That was it. So when you get an offer that's personalised and they know you, when something went wrong and they reached out, you just don't want to feel like you're screaming into the void and getting no help. I think loyalty could be very proactive and interesting. Whether it's saying, "Hey, if you book this hotel room, it'll put you up to the next tier. Hey, you could use your points on this, fine." Just telling you, rather than points being an abstract thing on a different part of the site, blending it into the experience. And if a person is getting unhappy, have they refreshed a page with their flight details 5 times? Have they gone to the upgrade or change your flight bit 3 times? Have they been rapidly moving and clicking around? All these signs of churn and unhappiness and engagement, they don't start when a person decides they're leaving. I just want to go back to an example very quickly from Spark, a mobile phone network in New Zealand who are a customer. And they're using AI internally. They've built their own engine rather than outsourcing it to a third one, which I think as the cost of compute and other services goes up, great idea. Build your own model with your own data. But they're looking for signs of churn or becoming a VIP when they first start to happen, because that doesn't happen right at the end. It might be that someone started visiting a little bit less regularly, but their upgrade or end of contract isn't until next year. So rather than saying, "Oh, we'll worry about that in months 22 to 24, maybe it's too late. So the earlier you bring it, the more you recognize emotion and the more proactive you are, the more it's a true loyalty scheme rather than just a sales tool.
I think that's we've got a couple of questions. Yeah, very valid point in terms of how you can use AI to kind of react on the customer signals, not just for like the price or the kind of trying to compete at that level. Sorry, Hans, let's hear if we could see. Oh, you got it. Thanks.
So as agents increasingly intermediate people's interactions between, themselves and brands or anything else, how do you move the edge to the agent so that you can see those signals and you're not the recipient of a kind of mechanistic set of responses? And then to what extent can you rely on the signals and the strength that you put on them from traditional footfall as opposed to, I'm going to call it traditional footfall, as opposed to that kind of agentic interaction?
That's quite a big question. And I think it's definitely one that we can pick up and carry on with. But I think it's exposure of those signals. You need some kind of context layer. We were talking earlier about, exposing data to the edge. That's another abstraction of exposing data, to make it available to agents. We need those signals in a context layer that is real time. It's got the governance behind it. We've got the consent that is required as well, right? So that's going to be like one of the key building blocks to this. Otherwise, without those kind of real-time signals, the intent, the behaviors, the things that Cal was talking about earlier, those signals start way before anybody decides to leave a brand or walk away. If we don't have that, then we're potentially just relying on data points that are pretty stale, and maybe will be kind of a bit irrelevant based on real-time intent. So context layer is very key to addressing that type of use case.
Hi, so just building on that question about kind of agentic intermediaries, I work in the financial services space. And a couple of days ago, the FCA came out with the Mills report, which is very interesting, but it talks about how effectively we operate in this new world in which we will have increasingly people with this technology at their disposal, and how our personalization, how our loyalty builds in this kind of world. It talks about some of the obvious risks for the entire industry, but what kind of risks are there to kind of institutions that operate, and how do we kind of guard against them? And I guess the second question would be, what kind of regulatory short to mid-term do we see that we need to bear in mind when we're kind of making these considerations?
See, finance is a very regulated sector, but something that's always been true is legislation has never been able to keep up with technology. You can't bring a law or regulation in until a technology exists. So I think, as well as regulation, you need to have a sense of what is the best thing that could go right with AI and what is the worst way it could go wrong. And I think you need to think about all the implications of that as well as regulation. Like, is there a kind of a center for excellence for AI? Do you have a crisis team, a crisis management plan? Where's it going to be used? So I think the regulation part is going to be very interesting, but also we're going to have to keep ahead of that because it's new technology. We don't really know what the black box of AI or agents or LLMs are going to spit out. So there needs to be a level of internal, like personal regulation about the potential impact and application, where I think that's going to be quite a challenge, but a really interesting market.
Hi, thank you. And yeah, I recently read a book called A Story is a Deal by Will Storr, which spoke really, really well about sort of customers and identifying and speaking to their identity. So I really loved your point there, Sebastian, about that. We're so early in our loyalty journey that we don't have a loyalty program, which means that we've got a complete blank slate ahead of us. And everything in our business needs to prove ROI. It's probably something that's been asked in every one of your businesses already, but do some of the technologies you talk about, using AI, that kind of thing, allow us to jump from kind of 0 to 60 really quickly and to prove ROI more effectively than you might have done in the past?
That's fun. I think that the biggest problem is that there's a lot of companies that think that the loyalty program will actually be the solution to everything. And even though I work a lot with loyalty programs, the answer is not always that the point is not the point. And that's the fun thing with it, is that I think that loyalty is nothing that you can like invest into in terms of like a program. Loyalty is an outcome of so many things that you're doing, and I think that that's where you want to have those ROI discussions. What happens if we're not investing into our loyalty? What if we are just losing out and we're continuously working with just acquisition and we are not taking care of our consumers? So I think that's like the actual truth, but yes, there are so many ways of that you can use AI to make that shift happen more quickly. And I think that that goes down to everything from actually looking into the data, the reports, but also daring to have some like one-to-one messages being sent out to pinpoint where they're going, and then just trust the data on that.
There's a really big shift from in loyalty programs from life cycle to events-based moments. Obviously, with AI now coming into the landscape, what do you see as the future or next step for loyalty customer journeys going forward?
I kind of think it's an amalgamation of both, because some people are driven by life cycle, others are driven by event. One size fits all means one size fits none. So understanding and using data to measure what a person is responsive to. Is it messaging, pictures, time, life cycle, event? And working out that loyalty is working out what you want. Not everyone else in the room, but what you want is loyalty. So I don't think it will shift from one to the other. I think it will be a mixture of both. And ideally, it will be down to a granular level of this person considers loyalty to be this thing. They're driven by these reasons, these emotions, these channels, these messaging, these times, this frequency of communication. The closer we can build up to that, the better we give people a genuinely good experience. And I think that is what drives loyalty. It's recognizing I'm different, that's okay, give me what I want, you'll have my money.
You have a take? Okay, agree. And I think that's kind of one area that AI makes that one-to-one that much easier. Like we've spoken about one-to-one messaging, this is not new, where personalization is concerned, but we have an opportunity now where insight is fast. It's not like what happened last week. It's like what's happening right now and give me that next best action for that individual. But again, it does come down to, do you have the data and the technology to deliver that message within that under 1 second attention span of that individual, which is no easy task. So here to help in the areas we can, but it's a bigger picture piece.
AI is an incredible tool for this, but you don't need it to start off. If you're starting with a clean blank slate or you want to do something new, all you really need is the ability to count. Like you can look at the signals from a person. So how many emails have we sent this person? How many paid media? How many SMS push notifications? From the number you've sent to the number they've opened, to the number of sessions that started, to the number of engagements and conversions. This data is already available to us. I remember once talking to a retailer. I said, okay, well, how many emails do you send out to a customer? They're, oh, 5 a week. I went, wow, that's quite a lot. What on? They went, oh, we'll find something. Like, so you've decided how many messages you're sending to every customer without knowing what's going on, everything. So there's a bit of work there to change it. Say, okay, well, if you send a bad email, you might get unsubscribed from. If somebody else sends your customer a bad email, they could get unsubscribed. And then we've all been there. You go through your email inbox like, right, who else is going in the bin? So you have to make sure that every communication is of value. So sometimes less is more. You could start just with counting, but AI allows you to do some really good things like predictive. Like I said, okay, well, I have been sending you too many emails. So what is the right time of day? What's the right subject line? And if you could bring AI on as a tool on top of just counting, then you're giving yourself the best of human insight and knowledge as well as AI as well. I think that's really where the sweet spot's going to be, because AI knows how many emails that it sent. It doesn't know how annoying that is. Humans do. I think the mixture of both human intelligence and artificial intelligence is truly where we're going to get to the best outcome.
Any other questions from anyone? Oh, yeah. He's loud enough. He doesn't need a mic. Two.
It's going to be unbearable for everyone. It feels like loyalty is really about leveraging the moments that matter, right? It's a moment that's been really good or really bad for a customer, and it's an opportunity to build the relationship. And I guess it is then the data that tracks to those moments that matter. What's the data that represents that this moment for a customer is an opportunity to leverage? In your experience, and this is maybe for the whole panel, and maybe anyone else in the crowd, what are the moments of matter that are missed the most by all of us?
I think it's when something starts to change. So, for example, let's say you've been engaging with a customer through paid media, and today they visit your site, and it's not a paid UTM link, it's an organic one. They might not do anything on that journey, but the fact that the channel has changed and we're no longer having to pay to communicate, they're coming in under their own steam. Little moments like that get missed because there's not an obvious next funnel step or transaction. So I like to think of it as you have act moments and you have awareness moments. And I think you build up a picture with the awareness moments, and then when you have a time to act, you have much better context. So I really like this idea of understanding change when it starts to happen, looking for the little signals and realizing when they start to snowball into something really big.
I think just one comment on that as well is kind of layering in that zero party angle. So in those phases where you're anonymous and you're coming unprompted, for example, you've got an opportunity to leverage those signals in that session to ask a question, to try and gather some feedback on sentiment to the brand, what they're here to do, what are you looking, a question that might help then move you on to the next phase of how you want to kind of direct that customer journey. So I think zero party days has got a big piece to play in that.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. But I think that one thing that is very missed, and I think that we will see more of, I think that we'll see more of it in the future, is companies that actually are standing for something and they dare to be silent as well. I think that look into what Spotify is doing is that all the playlists that I'm being they're putting up in my face when I'm entering Spotify app, I can't listen to them because they are not good, because they're trying to figure out what I want. But what I would really look forward to is to have a person who is actually choosing playlists that I actually can follow because I'm idolizing that person or so. Exactly like we're doing with rock bands or musicians in general, that everything that they're doing is not perfect, but they have some energy around them, or they have something that I actually trust and I actually would like to follow. Because I think that with AI, it's also incredibly easy at the moment to try to overanalyze things or ask the consumers what they want, because most consumers don't know what they want. And that's why I'm not intrigued of all the NPS messages being sent to me, because I don't care. I know that you as a company care about what I think, but I don't know what I want. I don't know what I do think of this purchase this time. I've done 10 purchases now and I still am okay with the product. And I think that that's what I'm really looking forward to, more companies that are actually daring to be silent or to be proud of what they're doing and say, this is it.
Got time for one more question?
In the absence of, more in terms of the privacy concerns that we're seeing consumers have more and more, how do we find the balance as a business between hyper-personalization, which sometimes can feel, from my opinion, quite intrusive, and then when you have those data points and you're almost talking too generically, have you found anything that almost the sweet spot between the two, what signals would be the strongest ones to go after in terms of behavioral?
I think that it's a mix, and it's more or less impossible to find the perfect mix. But I think that you will have to be able to talk to your customers, why are we going to use this data? And then you have to prove that this data is actually giving you something that is good. And I think that, for an example, my daughter turned 1 2 days ago, and I'm using a diaper brand that is called Libro, that is a Swedish brand, but they have a nice app. And they were, when she was born, it was like, please tell us the date. And then it's going, for some people that can feel intrusive, why should I talk about my daughter and daughter's name? But they were actually writing it in a nice way in terms of that we will use this data for this, because you are on a like fun journey now, a lot of things happening, and we're going to use the data for this. And then they were like, they've been doing it nicely in terms of like sending out some new diapers in terms of correct sizes when it should be changing. And then it's also been like when she turned 1, it's like, happy birthday, this is what's happening. And I think then it was okay, and I think it was nice. But I think that is, you have to talk to your consumers in terms of this is what we're going to use it for, and then push it a bit. And then, yeah.
I really like the question. To your point about when is too much, I like to call it don't cross the creepy line, because we have so much data. We could be like, hey, I noticed you spent 7.2 seconds longer on this page than normal, which means you're quite likely to buy it in the next 24 hours. And I know that if I give you a 15% discount, you're 80% more likely to buy it. But please don't. Whereas, bing, would you like a little discount? Oh, lucky me. In the past, like there's been debate around like how long after a session should you send a abandoned cart email. You could do it as soon as the browser closes. Shut it down. Bing. We notice you've stopped looking. Like we have the data, but we shouldn't be that quick. To your point about diapers, there's a quite a infamous counterpoint where a woman in America who was shopping, I think with Walmart, received like a free baby patch. Like, I'm not pregnant. 2 days later, I'm late, took a test. So they'd seen her purchase patterns, and it's been so close to what other expectant mothers at the same stage had bought. They went, oh, you're clearly early stage pregnancy. Here's a lovely gift. So just because we have the power doesn't mean we should use it. We should respect people. We should communicate with them. We should understand when is too much, too much. Many years ago, I built a chatbot for BMW where people could ask it questions about cars. And it answered too quickly was the feedback they got. People were like, well, it clearly doesn't know what I'm typing because I press enter and the answer is already back. So I tested it and I engineered in between 1 and 3 seconds of pretend typing time with the little dots. And the answer came back. And people were like, well, this version's much better because it's actually thinking about it. So you have to understand human nature and psychology and how it interplays with data and machines. If you get that right, you can give a good service without crossing the creepy line.
And I guess that kind of brings us to a conclusion in human in the loop and the power of perspective and understanding of your customer and understanding how people behave and the enhancement on that understanding that kind of AI can bring into the loyalty journey. But yeah, thank you so much, Sebastian, for all of your insights.